Introduction, the setting and context. Julius Caesar is one of William Shakespeare's most famous tragedies, written around 1599. The play is set in ancient Rome, at a time when the Roman Republic is in turmoil due to internal power struggles. It chronicles the events leading up to and following the assassination of Julius Caesar, a pivotal figure in Roman history. The play is not just a historical recount, but a rich exploration of themes such as power, ambition, honour, betrayal, and fate. Act 1. Seeds of Conspiracy. The play opens on a street in Rome where commoners are celebrating Caesar's triumph over Pompey, another powerful Roman general and politician. However, not everyone shares the people's enthusiasm. Two tribunes, Flavius and Marullus, scold the citizens for their fickleness and remove decorations from Caesar's statues, showing their disapproval of his rise to power. The scene shifts to a public space where Caesar makes his entrance, accompanied by a large entourage, including his close friend Mark Antony and his wife, Calpurnia. A soothsayer warns Caesar to beware the Ides of March, but Caesar dismisses him as a dreamer. Meanwhile, Caius Cassius, a senator who resents Caesar's growing power, begins to plot against him. Cassius is a shrewd manipulator and senses that Caesar's ambition might lead him to declare himself king, which would end the Roman Republic. He knows that to gain wider support for the conspiracy, he needs Brutus, another senator who is well respected and known for his integrity. Brutus, a close friend of Caesar, is deeply troubled. He loves Caesar, but fears that his friend's ambition may lead to tyranny. Cassius capitalizes on Brutus's inner conflict, persuading him that Caesar's death is necessary for the greater good of Rome. Cassius flatters Brutus, emphasizing his noble lineage and the responsibility he has to Rome. By the end of the act, Brutus is leaning towards joining the conspiracy, though he remains torn. Act 2. The plot takes shape. Brutus's internal struggle intensifies as he debates the moral implications of assassinating Caesar. In a soliloquy, Brutus rationalizes that killing Caesar is a preventive measure to stop him from becoming a tyrant, even though Caesar has shown no overt signs of tyranny. Brutus convinces himself that it is his duty to Rome, not personal malice, that drives his actions. As the conspirators meet at Brutus's house, they discuss the plan in detail. Cassius suggests that they also kill Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal friend, fearing that Antony might seek revenge. However, Brutus overrules him, arguing that they should be sacrificers, not butchers. Brutus believes that killing Antony would make them appear bloodthirsty, and that Antony, without Caesar, will be powerless. Meanwhile, Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, has a terrifying dream in which she sees a statue of Caesar spouting blood, and Romans washing their hands in it. She interprets this as a bad omen and begs Caesar to stay home on the Ides of March. Caesar initially agrees, but Decius Brutus, one of the conspirators, reinterprets the dream in a way that flatters Caesar's ego, suggesting that it signifies Rome drawing strength from Caesar. Decius also tells Caesar that the Senate plans to offer him a crown that day, appealing to his ambition. Caesar's pride and ambition override his wife's fears, and he decides to go to the Senate. Act 3. The assassination. The tension reaches its peak on the Ides of March. Despite various warnings, Calpurnia's dream, the soothsayer's warning, and a letter from Artemidorus, a supporter who knows of the conspiracy, Caesar proceeds to the Senate. In the Senate House, the conspirators surround Caesar under the guise of presenting a petition. Suddenly, they draw their daggers and stab him one by one. Caesar resists initially but stops fighting when he sees Brutus, his trusted friend, among the attackers. Uttering the famous line, "Et tu, Brute," Caesar succumbs, overwhelmed by the betrayal. With Caesar dead, the conspirators attempt to justify their actions to the public. Brutus, who is genuinely concerned with the welfare of Rome, speaks to the crowd, explaining that he loved Caesar but loved Rome more. He argues that Caesar's ambition would have enslaved the people, and his death was a necessary act to preserve their freedom. However, Mark Antony, who has been granted permission by Brutus to speak, delivers a masterful and manipulative oration. Antony initially appears to support the conspirators, repeatedly calling them honourable men, but his tone gradually becomes more sarcastic. He reveals Caesar's will, which leaves money and public parks to the citizens of Rome, and displays Caesar's mutilated body, stirring the emotions of the crowd. Antony's speech incites the people to riot, turning them against the conspirators, who are forced to flee the city. Act 4. The aftermath and power struggles. With Caesar dead and the conspirators in hiding, Rome descends into chaos. Antony, Octavius, Caesar's adopted heir, and Lepidus form the Second Triumvirate, a powerful alliance that seeks to avenge Caesar's death and consolidate power. The Triumvirate begins by creating a proscription list, condemning their political enemies to death, including several senators. As the Triumvirate gains control, tension arises between Antony and Octavius. Antony sees Lepidus as a mere tool to be used and discarded, while Octavius is more pragmatic and concerned with solidifying his own power. Meanwhile, Brutus and Cassius, now outlaws, have fled to Greece, where they raise an army. The two men begin to clash, particularly over money and military strategy. Their friendship is strained, and the pressures of war weigh heavily on them both. During a heated argument, Brutus accuses Cassius of corruption, while Cassius accuses Brutus of being overly idealistic. However, they eventually reconcile and prepare for battle against the forces of Antony and Octavius. That night, Brutus is visited by the ghost of Caesar, who tells him they will meet again at Philippi. Brutus interprets this as a bad omen, but resolves to face whatever fate has in store. Act 5. The Battle of Philippi and the tragic conclusion. The final act takes place on the plains of Philippi, where the forces of Brutus and Cassius face the armies of Antony and Octavius. Before the battle, Cassius, who has become increasingly superstitious, sees bad omens, such as eagles being replaced by scavenging birds around his camp. The battle begins, and initially Brutus's forces gain the upper hand against Octavius. However, miscommunication and bad luck lead to a turning point. Cassius, mistakenly believing that his friend Titinius has been captured by the enemy, orders his servant Pindarus to kill him. Titinius returns shortly afterward, revealing that he was not captured but merely delayed. Overcome with grief, Titinius kills himself beside Cassius's body. Brutus, now left to fight on without Cassius, tries to rally his troops, but is ultimately defeated. Knowing that capture and humiliation are inevitable, Brutus decides to take his own life. He asks his friend Strato to hold his sword while he runs onto it. In his final moments, Brutus expresses his belief that Caesar's ghost has been avenged and that he acted in what he thought was the best interest of Rome. When Antony and Octavius discover Brutus's body, Antony praises him as the noblest Roman of them all, acknowledging that, unlike the other conspirators, Brutus acted out of a genuine concern for the Republic rather than personal envy of Caesar. Conclusion. The themes and legacy. Julius Caesar is a rich exploration of the moral and ethical dilemmas faced by those in power. It examines the consequences of political ambition, the conflict between personal loyalty and public duty, and the dangers of mob mentality. The play is also a study of rhetoric and persuasion, as seen in the stark contrast between Brutus's rational appeal to the public and Antony's emotional manipulation. Shakespeare portrays Caesar as a complex character, a man of great power and ambition, but also vulnerable to flattery and betrayal. The play also delves into the character of Brutus, a man whose noble intentions lead him to commit an act of betrayal, with devastating consequences. Brutus is often seen as the tragic hero of the play, a man who is ultimately undone by his own ideals and his misjudgment of others. The story of Julius Caesar remains relevant today, as it continues to provoke discussions about the nature of power, leadership, and the ethical dilemmas faced by those who wield authority. Shakespeare's portrayal of the political machinations of ancient Rome serves as a timeless reflection on the human condition and the complexities of governance.